Great. Yeah, and we're live. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And my name is Elka. I'm GMAT Club moderator, and we're having a guest today, Mervyn. Hi, Mervyn. Mervyn will tell us about his really spectacular experience with doing even several GMAT tests and finally showing very high result. It was really a very interesting debrief. So the ones who didn't read it yet, we will provide the link to the debrief. But now let's use the chance and let's talk live to Mervyn. Hi, Mervyn. Please quickly introduce yourself and maybe outline some basic facts about your GMAT journey.
Okay, that's a lot to cover, just not the introduction. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Mervyn. I live in Bangalore in India. I've been working in consumer goods for the past 3 years across multiple functions, mostly projects and a bit of operations and a little bit of brand as well, you could say. And I don't have anything else in the introduction. I guess I'll dive right into my GMAT journey. So for those of you who have read the GMAT debrief, you know that I attempted the GMAT thrice. So my plan was to catch the first round somehow, like make it to the R1. So I first wrote the GMAT in, I guess, July, the first week of July. And I got a 720, which I know is a good score, but in the Indian demographic, it's probably not incredibly competitive, especially for the top schools. So I thought I'd give myself a little more time. So I went for a second attempt again a month later in August. And oh my God, I was so shocked. I scored a 710 on the second attempt. So it was lower than my first attempt. And that was a bit heartbreaking. And I think I gave myself 2 or 3 days to just recover. And then I just thought to myself, okay, Mervyn, the GMAT has 8 attempts in total, and you can write 5 in 1 year. So I was just calculating in my head, okay, what can I do? How many times can I write this before I get a good enough score? And I was just aiming for a 740 or a 750. I was not planning on going this high. I mean, I guess anyone doing GMAT knows that. So yeah, I gave myself 2 days, thought about it, and then decided to give GMAT again in a month because I was like, okay, let's not go down without a fight. The R2 applications are still there. And I did not want to concentrate both on the application and my GMAT at the same time because then I'd do neither well. So I wanted to focus it all in one direction. So I just went in for a YOLO attempt. Like, I'm just going to try once in the first week of September and see what happens. And boom, to my surprise, it was a 770. I was as surprised as anyone else. I was not expecting that.
Great, that's really very interesting journey. I read it several times even because it's really fantastic. So congratulations on this great score. You touched upon a couple of topics which I would really love to talk more about. So first of all, let's talk about the goal setting. You scored a really tremendous score with the first try, with the first attempt. But you told that for yourself, for your demographics, it's not enough. Could you tell our folks a little bit more how to decide what should be the proper target score and whether you need to, stretch and try to score more?
Okay, so I guess the way to look at it is that if you're from a very traditional background and you're from a demographic that is overrepresented, so what you really need to look at is the average GMAT score or the median GMAT score at your target school. And you would want to add ideally 10 or 20 points to that. So if the average is 720, you want to aim for a 740. If it's a 730, 750. So you get what I'm saying, right? So for my target schools, like I felt that this was a bit low. And I also knew that this did not really represent my ability to do the test. So if you know in your head that, okay, I think I can do better, and another attempt really helps, because for a lot of people, they get nervous on their first attempt, and there are a lot of ways things can go wrong on your first attempt. So I think everyone should really mentally prepare themselves for multiple attempts, because it's really difficult to get it all right in the first go.
Right. Yeah, great. I think that's really important information. I would tell you really just need to analyze what is the popular profile for GMAT takers, right? Like if you're from India, definitely you need to try to score more. If you are from Asia, you also need to try to score more. So if you cannot be described as very, very unique applicant, let's say, I think that's an important component, and that's pretty much a guiding principle for that. Thank you. All right. So how long did this journey take you all together from the very first idea? Okay, I need to score a GMAT. Up to the very last attempt.
So the way I look at it, I think I got a bit overconfident on my first attempt. I studied for 2 months. I was doing pretty okay in my mocks, so I decided to go for it. So what I realized after my first attempt was that even though I thought I was great at Quant, turns out that I had a lower percentile in Quant as compared to verbal. I went so overboard with the verbal preparation that the score was skewed in terms of verbal, and I don't feel proud about it because I'm an engineer. I'm supposed to be having a higher Quant score. So that really bugged me, and it also told me that, okay, I can improve on this. So you could say 2 months for the first attempt, after that a month for the second, and again a month. So in all, around 4 months to my final score.
Great. And you mentioned that that's the reason why you decided to apply in the round 2, not in the round 1, to invest more time in GMAT preparation, right?
Yes, that's correct. So that's the same idea. I don't think it's possible to concentrate. I mean, it's definitely possible. You just need to know what kind of person you are. Can you focus on multiple things in your life happening at the same time? I just felt that if I put my energy into both applications and the GMAT, I would do neither of them well. I would probably mess up my applications and my GMAT. And GMAT is kind of like a milestone or a tick mark to begin your application, right? So I wanted to get it right and only then move forward. I know it's a tough year with COVID and the pandemic going on, plus everyone's talking about the deferrals and all of that. So I would say I did lose a bit of heart applying in round 2 because I felt that personally this is going to be tougher. But then I thought, hey, why not do it anyway? Because I was planning to apply next year. And it's just that I thought that I had to give the GMAT multiple more times.
Yeah. Great. Fantastic advice. I think that's really a right thing to do, to pretty much try to first do the GMAT and then trying to apply. But if you're a multitasking person, maybe you can try the different way and then let us know. We will invite you for another debrief. Great. All right, so let's talk about Quant. The huge part of your debrief you dedicated to the topic of silly mistakes, which is like super irritating for everyone. We all do these silly mistakes and they just do not go away. What was your plan of attack?
So the fact that I was making silly mistakes wasn't really apparent to me in my first attempt. It was only after my second attempt that I realized that, okay, this is a serious problem, because I saw my Quant score was 49 in both the attempts, the first and the second one. I saw that I did not improve at all. Even though I practiced a lot more, I tried a lot of different questions. I was like, okay, I was wondering what is going wrong. And I just came across this article that I can't remember who posted it on GMAT Club about silly mistakes. So what I thought about it was, see, what's happening is that I'm getting overconfident with questions. I think that they're easy, they're not. I think that they're difficult, they're probably easy. But what is happening is that GMAT is really tricky about the Quant questions. So whenever you're performing a calculation, let's say a word problem, for example, a lot of times you're solving for some variable, right? And it's not exactly what the question has asked for. But because you're in that zone and you're so concentrating just on that question, sometimes you just forget what the final answer is for, and GMAT always has this very clever, they always have the wrong answer there. So it's so easy to fall for it because the wrong answer is there. They know how people make mistakes. On my third attempt, I was very careful about it, and I would laugh at the wrong answers because I knew they were there. I would look at them and go, okay, I know you're the wrong answer, I'm not going to select you.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. I also made the same experience, that there are typical wrong answers, and sometimes it makes sense to get to know them, to get to know your thoughts, to be able to recognize them. Okay, and this will be a little bit of speculation now, but what to your feeling was the distance between 49 and 50? What took you to get there, apart from getting rid of the silly mistakes?
See, I guess apart from the silly mistakes, another thing that I noticed was there were few topics that I wasn't paying a lot of attention to. Things like number properties and factors and all of these things that you've never really seen after high school because you don't use that in college either, right? So I was a bit overconfident about it. I thought that, okay, we all do maths, so this is got to be the same thing. But it's not. You really need to pay special attention to those topics that you're weak at. And that is where I realized that another of my mistakes was not maintaining an error log for Quant.
Right.
I had tunnel vision, right? I was just focusing on sentence correction and verbal and all of that. I had an error log. Even I have my error log saved with me. I just read the file name. It's called SC errors because I was so focused on sentence correction errors. So yeah, that's when I realized that, okay, this is a really bad strategy. I need to focus on my errors in the Quant section as well. And what really helped me was GMAT Club's error log. So what you can do is that if you download the Excel file of the error log from GMAT Club, you can analyze that data, right? You can pick a pivot table out of it and really look at it topic wise. Okay, these are some topics that I'm weak at. And what surprised me the most was when I got my ESR for my first attempt, I just compared it to my error log. It was exactly the same. And that surprised me so much that, okay, I always had these errors. I just never looked at them. I should have been looking at the kind of errors I made instead of giving the GMAT and spending $250 on figuring out what my weaknesses are.
Right. Maybe do you have some advice for our viewers how to keep this discipline of putting something in error log? Because that's a pretty boring exercise. How did you keep yourself motivated?
I guess the motivation hits you when you write multiple GMAT attempts and you realize that you're making the same mistake again and again. So my advice to the viewers would be, if you don't want to do that and you want to learn from other people's mistakes, please take this advice. Please maintain an error log. And you don't have to be super fancy about it. What I would do is that I'd just copy the GMAT Club link into one of the columns and I just write what the error was, like silly mistake, or if it's a data sufficiency question, did not read the question correctly, or the kind of typical GMAT stuff. You forgot that X is supposed to be an integer, not any number. So I would just provide a brief, I would say, a description of what the error was and not go into too much details, because if you're solving tens and tens and hundreds of questions, you are definitely gonna get overwhelmed.
True that. Look, and what quant sources did you use for the preparation? So I understood GMAT Club questions. Anything else?
So I started off like any other student studying for the GMAT does. I bought the official guide and I bought the quant review as well. But then I realized that GMAT Club is so much better because there are so many questions on it. You just need to be careful when you set the filters that you don't set the filters on the GMAT prep questions, because then your mock tests are ruined if you've already seen those questions. You don't want to do that. But apart from that, I guess GMAT Club is all you need. You just need to use the resource. It's such a huge question bank that's out there and people just don't use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Thank you very much for that. Let's make a step aside a little bit and talk about your second attempt. So you saw this score on the screen, which was even lower than during the previous attempt. How to get out of this demoralized state of mind? How did you motivate yourself and stood up and continued it?
I guess at that point, you really need to ask yourself, like, what is it that you're fighting for? Like, do you care? If you care enough about getting that MBA, I think you will put in the second or the third attempt. And I just asked myself, okay, what is it that I'm fighting for? Do I want to do an MBA this year? Because my mind was telling me, oh, it's the pandemic year. You have so many excuses to go around, right? Oh, it's COVID. I couldn't study, or you really don't. You can find so many external factors about it, that why you couldn't do well. But you really need to ask yourself, like, do I want this, and do I want it bad enough? I wouldn't say I was super motivated immediately after looking at that score. I guess as soon as I saw that score on the screen, I probably didn't do anything when I came back from the test center. I was super depressed. I think I watched South Park all day because I just did not want to think about what had happened. Then I took 2 days, really thought about what went wrong. And then I thought to myself, okay, I should get the ESR once again. So what I noticed was that even though I had dramatically improved at sentence correction, I had a 60th percentile in reading comprehension. And that really told me that I had messed it up. I mean, I had a good score, and because, again, I focused solely on my errors in my second attempt, I missed the bigger picture. I let concepts that were strong get weak. I just kept building on my weaker concepts. So how did I motivate myself? I really don't have an answer for that. It was just a long process.
All right. And yeah, you need to be prepared in advance for this, probably, that it may take several attempts. It's also, I think, important thing to think about when you're planning your timing. When will you apply round 1, round 2? Just, yeah, not always does it work out with the first attempt. All right. Could you tell us a little bit more about this ESR, because probably some people do not know what it is. Could you tell me what it is? How can you get it, and what information can you draw from it?
Okay, so the ESR stands for the Enhanced Score Report, if I'm not wrong. I've been out of touch with the GMAT for so long that I've probably forgotten. So if you just Google it, I guess you'll get a link to the official GMAT page where you can buy it for 25 euros, if I'm not wrong. And so yeah, a word of advice. The ESR is like really great for drawing in broad statistics. Like, okay, these are the areas that I'm good at, because it gives you a breakdown with quant, with verbal, and even in verbal, it will tell you your individual percentiles in reading comprehension, in sentence correction, in critical reasoning. And even within those, there are some subcategories that you can look into. And it will also tell you about your pacing. That is important for some people, because I know a lot of people suffer with because of pacing as well. So it will give you your quarter-wise results, like for every 9 questions in each quarter. Like, were you on time? Did you rush it, perhaps? So those are some things that can be answered if you look at an ESR. So an ESR can be insightful if you think that there are some specific areas that you're weak at.
Right. Yeah, I also saw some guys asking here in the comments, asking for advice, for example, but to give about number properties. I think that the ESR is really a good thing to do, or also you will see it if you track your error log. If you put something in your error log, then you will see where do you do mistakes, and you just need to focus on that. I mean, maybe we just addressed this question. Do you have any specific advice on number properties?
Okay, number properties. See, you really need to hit the books on that one, because number properties are not super obvious. They're not. They're not intuitive, and you're going to waste a lot of time if you don't know number properties well. So there are some great threads on Reddit. I know, who's that guy who's like really famous on the quant section, like Brunel, right? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right,
yeah.
But he has this compilation of all topics. And I guess someone from GMAT Club could put a link, or you could just search on Google. You're going to get that link where he's compiled everything about number properties as well. So I would advise that if you feel that whatever resource you're looking at is not useful or is not that great, you could always go back to GMAT Club. Like I said, GMAT Club is a great resource. You just need to use the search function and look for stuff.
All right, great. Thank you for your endorsements. Guys, you can ask questions in the chat right during the conversation. I'm keeping a look at it, but also at the end, we will pick up some of those. All right, let's move ahead to the verbal section, which you described. Some parts of it you described as your mortal enemy, which I found really hilarious. Let's first talk about the sentence correction, which is like for non-native speakers, it's indeed also a killer. And how did you motivate yourself to, finally ace those 1-2 mistakes which you were doing? And what resources did you use?
So I started off preparing for the verbal section, again, using the guide. I first looked into the guide and started solving questions I saw. For every 10 questions, I think I got 4 or 5 wrong. And that told me that, okay, this approach is not going to work. You can't just hit the exercises and, just think that everything is going to fall in place if you solve more questions. That is not going to happen. one resource that I really like, and this is not an endorsement of any guide, is Manhattan's sentence correction guide. I think that book is really comprehensive when it comes to those grammar-based rules. Although it may not be very useful for the logic-based questions, and you see a lot of questions on GMAT sentence correction on the actual test, which are logic-based. But that is if you get the grammar-based questions right. So if you're messing up the grammar-based questions, you're not going to go to that higher difficulty. So you really need to ace those grammar-based questions and the Manhattan SC guide is really good at that. You'd have to give it 3 or 4 reads. It's a very dense book. It's not something you can read in a night. I would not.
That's thick, right?
Yeah, I would not recommend doing that. And you can probably skip the idioms section because idioms, I believe, are not tested that much on GMAT anymore. In my 3 attempts, I cannot recall seeing a single question that was solely based on idioms. It always has something else on which basis you can eliminate options, but it's not going to be only idioms. If you know idioms, that's great. I mean, you can straight off take the right answer, but you can look for other sources of error, and Manhattan SC guide is really good at that.
Right. Could you tell us a little bit more? Maybe there are some guys who just started their preparation. Is sentence correction only about grammar? Is it enough just to learn all the grammar rules, be great at TOEFL, let's say, or IELTS, and it means you will master sentence correction questions?
The short answer is no, that's not going to happen. But you really need to have a springboard, a starting point, right? So getting the grammar fundamental right is part of that basic preparation that you need to do. So once you are on that level where you can solve grammar-based questions and GMAT questions, okay, yeah, I think I should make this clear. This is not like any other English exam or the TOEFL or anything of that sort. So a lot of questions are going to be logic-based, but to know that logic, you need to know the basic rules. So even though you're a great problem solver, I would not recommend diving straight into the questions and hoping for the test. You need to pinpoint and understand all the grammar rules. So I would say do not try to attempt questions. They're only going to demoralize you if you don't get that base right.
Yeah, great. All right, and then the next part is critical reasoning, right? And I liked the passage of yours when you were writing about really that one shouldn't rely on the merely on intuition, but rather on the methods. Could you tell us a little bit more about this methodological approach, and where did you learn it from?
So critical reasoning, I would say, was one of those things that I was good at even at the beginning. I did not face a lot of issues with critical reasoning, so I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question, but I could tell some things that I was doing wrong, and I think that is something that even you guys should look out for. So one would be, this is basically a method that you could find in a lot of books as well, like Manhattan's Critical Reasoning Guide, but reading the question stem properly is super critical. And what I noticed was that GMAT has this funny habit of, putting in one extra word into one option that makes it wrong. They would just slip in that maybe or could be, or, I forget the actual term that the lingo of critical reasoning, but they use a very strong language that makes it wrong. I would not advise solely relying on it, but you need to be methodical. You need to follow those methods that are mentioned. I guess if you're looking for some resources, the Manhattan Critical Reasoning Guide is good enough to get a starting point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's pretty much about they never ask you like who has never did something. It's always may not, maybe not, could be, which makes it already a bit tricky, right? And the last part, the reading comprehension, so mortal enemy of yours. How did it come? It turned out like this for many people. Like at least in the beginning, it seems like reading comprehension must be the easiest part. What were your insights? How was your performance changing over time? And how did you fix your issues with that?
So I guess what went wrong with reading comprehension for me was I was so focused on sentence correction even on my mocks, I saw that, okay, I always make 4 or 5 mistakes in my verbal section. I saw, oh, 3 of them are sentence correction. Oh my God, I'm terrible at sentence correction. I never noticed those 1 or 2 questions that I got wrong on the reading comprehension. I never really asked myself, okay, what is going wrong? Why am I getting these questions wrong? So it turns out I had a very fundamental problem. The problem was that I was not reading the passage really well. And you could say this is something that I do. I'm a lazy person. I don't write the passage summary or do anything of that sort. And so when I encounter a question, I think, oh, I read this and I know what the answer is. And GMAT, as you know, is tricky as hell. They like rely solely on these tricks. I call them cheap tricks because I don't like what they're doing, because they insert that one word somewhere in between that makes an option incorrect. But it's really easy to fall for traps if you don't read the question correctly. So what I would do is, regardless of how confident I'm feeling about a question, and even if I know that I know the answer, I would go back to the passage, look at that single line where it says, okay, this is the line that they're referring to, and it is exactly what is being asked. I would always double check. And I think that's good advice for people who don't write summaries and do anything of that sort. You try to do everything in your head. Please go look at the passage and look for that exact same line where the question is being referred to before actually taking off an answer.
Yeah, right. Do I understand correctly that the error log was helpful for you here as well? Because if you're doing just one mistake, but it's always the same kind of mistake, you indeed can just remove it by noticing that you're only doing always this kind of mistake with the help of the error log. Is it right?
Yeah, that's correct. For reading comprehension specifically, I'd also mentioned the type of question that I got wrong. Like, instead of just saying that, okay, I got this question wrong, I'd say, what kind of a question was it? Was it an infer from passage kind of question, or an according to the passage, or what is the author trying to say? So what I realized was that I was getting the inference questions correctly because I remembered the gist of the passage, right? I would always remember what the passage was about. So any kind of inference questions you will probably get right because you've understood the passage well. But questions about, questions that specifically refer to something like according to the passage, dash, dash, dash. For those kinds of questions, you really need to go back to the passage and look into it. Okay, this is what the question is asking for specifically, and this is what I need to do. And that is what my error log told me, that, okay, these are the kinds of questions you're getting wrong.
Yeah, great. And what is the right pace to read the passage, to not to skip the important information, but also not to delve on this for too long? How did you define the right pace for yourself?
So yeah, I came up with a kind of a rule. I had a rule for everything. Even for Quant, I had a rule that if I don't get a question in 1.5 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and skip it and just guess. So for reading comprehension, I believe out of the 3 sections in the verbal, the subcategories of verbal, I think it's going to take the maximum amount of time. Maybe you can save time on critical reasoning and on sentence correction if you're like really good at it. Maybe you can do it in 1 minute and 10 seconds. But for reading comprehension, I guess for long passage, you need to put in those solid 4 to 5 minutes to get that passage right before you start answering the questions. Because if you've understood the passage well, you're probably going to run through this next 2 or 3 questions in really short succession.
Right.
So yeah, for a long passage, I would take 4 to 5 minutes. 5 is really the upper end. You should really target 4.5. For short passages, I guess 2.5 minutes. That is what my target was. But again, guys, this is because I would always go back to the passage to verify my answer. So I took a bit extra time. So you could say I was being a little light on the reading part, but you should always focus on understanding the passage well, because if you don't understand the passage well, it's as good as not reading the passage. Right. So you need to figure, I guess everyone needs to figure this out for themselves. At what pace can I answer every question without, second guessing myself? Mm-hmm. That would tell you what your ideal pace should be. And people should not be afraid of the timer running out because it's a long passage, because I know it freaks a lot of people out that, oh my God, I already spent 4 minutes on this. That's not the case. It's passage, guys. Relax. You need time. Yeah,
great advice here. And Yeah, pretty much for me, also the question is whether you did read more text to increase your pacing, or like did you use any additional resources to try reading comprehension out?
I did refer to the Manhattan RC guide as well. I say that a lot, but I refer to all of the guides. They have some good advice if you're struggling with reading comprehension, but I don't know where I read this. I think it was on GMAT Club thread, which says that if you're putting you don't need to put more than 20 to 22 hours of prep on reading comprehension. And if you are, and you're trying to solve a lot of questions, there's something wrong with your approach that you really need to figure out. And yeah, I should probably mention this at this point of time. My approach was messed up a bit because I tried doing LSAT questions. And the thing about LSAT reading comprehension questions is that they're really long, they're super dense, and they're about topics that you probably don't care about, like GMAT questions as well, but even worse. And the thing with those paper tests, those LSAT paper tests, is that on the top, this is written 35 minutes. And you keep thinking to yourself, oh my God, I should try to do this faster. But you should remember that each of those papers has 25 questions. There are 4 really long passages and a total of 25 questions. You don't need to do that in 35 minutes. You need to do that in, I guess, 45 or 50 minutes. You need to really pace yourself. So I had this fear of running out of time because of doing all these LSAT questions. That was a bad idea. You really don't need to go look for any other resources apart from the GMAT questions. I would strongly discourage anyone trying to do so. I mean, LSAT questions are great for critical reasoning, but reading comprehension, you might want to stay off of it. And don't tell me that you've run out of official questions, because there are so many resources and there's so many official questions. You're not going to run out. You don't need to do this.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Thank you very much. I think this is super valuable. I'm getting a little bit, I'm missing GMAT already.
Yeah, so do I. When you ask me all these questions, I try to recall, okay, wait, what was it that I did?
Yeah, right. All right. So this was very specific. I will just summarize this part a little bit, especially because many folks are asking about the resources that you've used. I understood like one of the key resources for you, other than the official guide, was actually GMAT Club, and all the questions. Also, you sorted the questions, you filtered, you tried to find the specific questions you want to improve on, and you heavily used, I understood, a Manhattan series for both for quant and for verbal part, right?
Not for quant, just for verbal.
Just for verbal part. All right.
Yeah.
And then let's move ahead to the actual, like to the mock-ups. How many of those did you do? What sources did you use, and how useful did you find to do more and more mock-ups?
So I think I went a bit overboard before my first attempt. So I took 2 weeks off work. I think I wrote a total of 12 or 13 mocks, including all 6 official GMAT prep mocks, and I think 6 from Veritas prep. See, I guess that was a mistake, because after writing so many mocks, I was so overwhelmed on the day of the test that because I was so stressed about going through so many mocks all in one row, what I was trying to do was build stamina for the test. That because I haven't written a competitive exam in so many years, probably 7 years, I guess. Like out of college, I've been out of college for 3 years. So I was really trying to build that stamina. The mistake was that I was not reviewing my errors. I kept writing mocks. I was not going through my errors. I was not seeing what was going wrong. I had this tunnel vision. Oh my God, I need to do so many mocks by this amount of time to be able to get a good score. And I think you should not do that. You should not take too many mocks. You should really focus on what your mistakes are in every mock that you attempt. So yeah, I'm not sure. I kind of forgot what your question was. I'm not sure if I answered it.
It's all right. Just keep the flow of whatever comes to your mind when you hear about mocks. So you said like doing more mocks, it's not necessarily useful, right? Because you just pretty much get tired because every test is stressful. And you mentioned Veritas prep. You mentioned the official tests. Did you use any other mocks?
See, all of these websites, all of these prep sites have one free mock, right? I think I went through some of those as well. I think I went through one of GMAT Club's mocks as well. So yeah, I used all the free resources that I could. But then again, like nothing really compares to GMAT Prep's quality when it comes to mocks. I think they're really the most representative. The other mocks I felt were either too easy or extremely tough and not tough in the way that the GMAT test is, because GMAT really tests you on subtle, tricky skills, right? They don't want you to solve a really lengthy question. Some of these mocks were doing exactly that. I saw some of the quant questions were like super lengthy, and that is not what the GMAT is all about. GMAT is about finding that right logic, plugging it in, and getting an answer in 2 minutes and moving on. So that way, I guess you could use mocks. Mocks are a great resource to understand where you stand and what your scores are, but you need to be a bit careful about reading too much into it, especially in the verbal section. I saw that a lot of the questions on the verbal part were really controversial on GMAT Club. Like people don't agree with the answer that the prep company has come up with. And it really drains you, because then you're confused, right? You're like, okay, I've studied so much and the site says something else, the mock says something else. What is the right thing? I would say, don't get into that. Use the official resources. I would not recommend using a lot of non-official mocks.
Okay. And how about like last, let's say, week or a couple of weeks prior, in the run up to the actual test? Let's take only first attempt and the last attempt. Did you change it somehow when you compare those two attempts? And what did you do in the last week?
So yeah, I changed a lot of things. Like before my first attempt, like I said, I took 2 weeks off work, writing mocks and really getting into the zone for that exam. On my last attempt, I just took a day off before my exam just to relax myself. I did not do anything the day before. I think I was watching some TV show, probably South Park. And I just went into the exam the next day. I was really not thinking about what was going to happen. The first exam, I was so worried. I remember traveling to the test center and just thinking in my head, oh my God, what if I do really bad? What is my plan? I'm going to miss R1. So all of that pressure really built up on me in my first 2 attempts, because I was still trying to catch that deadline. So once I was free of that deadline, I was like, okay, this is all fair game. Now I can do whatever I want. And when I did that, I actually did a lot better. And I did not write a lot of mocks before my second and third attempt. I think I wrote 1 or 2 mocks, because there was really nothing that mocks could offer anymore.
Right. And what about your actual test experience? Did it get easier with every next attempt? Did you get more relaxed?
Okay, on my first attempt, I remember, like, I always start with this order, like verbal, then quant, and then the integrated reasoning and AWA. Because by the time 2 hours hits on the clock, I am like super tired and I can't focus on anything after that. So I was like, okay, let's keep IR and AWA for that. I remember on my first attempt, when I started off verbal, for the first 10 minutes, I was on autopilot mode. I had no idea what was happening. I don't even know if I was reading the questions right and what I was doing. But I guess that was not that big an issue, because I saw my ESR, I was doing well. I was really, really stressed out in my first attempt. In my second, it was mostly the same. So funny thing happened in the third attempt. Now, because I was so focused on not making mistakes or not making any silly mistakes, I actually ran out of time in my second attempt. I mean, when I was doing my verbal section, for the last 3 questions, I had exactly 3 minutes. And 2 of those were critical reasoning questions. So once that was done, I went into the break room, I went into the washroom. And you remember that meme was like really famous during our time, right? That coffin dance, right? You remember the coffin dance song?
Right, yeah.
That was playing in my head. Like I was like, oh my God, I've just screwed it up completely. And this attempt is as good as gone. But somehow I just collected myself. Okay, you have to go through the quant and the other sections as well. And I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. This test is gone. You just really need to focus on getting out of here somehow. And On my AWA is the last thing that you attempt if you go in that order. Again, I fell short of time, and I was just reviewing my essay, and all of a sudden the time was going to go out. So I just hit submit, and I completely forgot that as soon as you hit submit, you get your score. So if I remembered that okay, when you hit submit, you get your score, I would have probably been super nervous about it. But I just hit submit and I saw my score. I saw 770. I was like, okay, this is odd. I did not expect it. And probably the GMAT center guys also know me super well since I've been to the center for 3 times, and they're probably relieved that I'm not going to be going there again. But yeah, it was stressful even on the last attempt. I guess that's just the experience of GMAT. No matter how you prepare for it on the actual test day, you're gonna be stressed, and it's good to be stressed, I would say, because if you're nervous, it really shows that you care about something. So I guess what I would say the advice over here is that stress is really a normal part of it. You need to accept it. There's really nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Just own it, right? Yeah. I think that's also a great piece what you have mentioned, that it also many people tend to do it, like during the actual test, they tend to overcheck, to really dwell on the questions too long, and which is dramatic for the pacing, what you mentioned already. So this needs to be avoided. Do you have any general advice on keeping the good pace?
Oh, yeah. So I had a rule about it. I mean, a friend of mine told me. So the verbal section has how many? 65 minutes, right? 65 or 36 questions, if I'm not wrong.
Right,
so what you really, something like that. I hope guys don't read too much into it. It's been a long time since I've written GMAT. I've probably forgotten about it. So 36 questions means 9 questions per quarter. And 65 minutes by 4 quarters is 16 and 17 minutes. So what I would do is that the clock starts at 65. So by the time I'm done with the 9th question, I should be at 49 minutes because it's 16 minutes per quarter. If you're not at 49 minutes, that means you're going slow and you need to catch up. So I would really keep track of my pacing. I would see the time, 49, then it's going to be 33, and it's supposed to be 17 minutes left on the timer. So you can really think about it that way, that how much time do I left and where do I need to pick up? So even if you go slow on the first quarter, you know that you need to pick up pace and make up. I did the similar thing for Quant as well. 31 questions, I guess, 62 minutes. So that's 2 minutes per question. And I had this rule, like I said, if at a minute and a half, you have absolutely no idea what the question is about, please guess and move ahead. I know for some questions, you really need to spend 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but you can do that only if you know what you're doing. And it's just taking long because of the calculation or the method that you took. But if you don't, just move on.
Right. Yeah, I even heard about some advice. I actually use it myself back in the time when I did the test. That during the time while all these instructions are appearing on the screen regarding the GMAT, you just prepare the grid. Like, right, at this point of time, I need to be done with this question, just to keep this track instead of over-calculating it, because it also adds up additional anxiety.
That is true. I guess you could write it down, but at that point, I had written so many mocks and GMAT so many times, I remembered most of it.
Yeah. How was your morning at the time of any of the attempts? How did you tackle the stress in the morning?
So what I would do was that before every attempt, like on the ride to the test center, I would call a friend and we would just talk about random things, not necessarily about the GMAT attempt. So before each attempt, I called one random person. I would always tell them, I'm going to call you an hour before my exam, and we're going to talk about random stuff that has nothing to do with the exam to distract me. I would do that because, the journey to that center can be a bit unnerving. So I would do that and not get stressed about it. I would, for food or for your breakfast, you do exactly what you do every day. Don't try to do anything special for that day. Don't build that pressure on top of you that, oh, this is the day I need to perform well. Don't do that.
Yeah, right. Great, thank you very much. It was very valuable advice. As I said, I am even missing the GMAT, which is already past me. So maybe you could, complete this session with a couple of words. What are your plans now with the standing GMAT score? When are you applying? What are you going to do?
So yeah, I am applying in round 2. I'll probably be applying to Kellogg, Booth, and Wharton. And I'm aware that things are tough this year, and I'm not sure what's going to happen, but that's not going to stop me from reapplying next year anyway. So yeah, that's what my plan is. I'm open to the possibility that things can go wrong at any moment, and just hoping for the best at this moment. I'm halfway done through my application, so I just hope that they go well and I don't have to be a reapplicant. But yeah, that's what it is.
That's great. I really adore your assertiveness. That's I think it's the right time also to be brave, be it taking another attempt at the GMAT exam or at this times just go ahead as an international applicant and still hit it. I'm sure you will be successful. I wish you all the best. And I think we covered most of the questions asked in the chat. Thank you, everyone asking. And keep a look on the GMAT website. We are having more sessions to come in the following weeks. And everyone stay healthy. Mervyn, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. Thank you for doing this.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.